US President Donald Trump has sternly stated that he does not intend to extend the ceasefire with Iran, which expires in just a few hours, and therefore the US is ready to launch a massive attack on Iran as early as tonight. Although later the same Donald Trump casually stated that he had already extended the ceasefire, allegedly right now. US Vice President J.D. Vance was supposed to fly to Islamabad for talks with the Iranians, although the Iranians themselves have not yet confirmed their participation in these talks. Donald Trump himself looks increasingly confused because on Sunday he told reporters that a peace agreement with Iran should be reached by Monday. On Monday morning he said, no, wait, Vice President Vance is now heading to Islamabad for talks, but on Tuesday instead. Tuesday is ending and Vance still hasn't flown anywhere. And then, casually, Trump adds that the deadline for reaching a peace agreement is now Wednesday evening, that is, April 22. And overall, the Pakistani mediators no longer believe that an agreement will be reached anytime soon, and are just asking Donald Trump to extend his latest super tough ultimatum and deadline. So, in all this confusion, let's talk about what's actually happening with the negotiations. My name is Pechiy. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start this episode, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave any comment you want, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechiy News. The link is in the description of this video. So, Western analysts are already joking that Donald Trump has introduced a new concept, the fog of peace. Well, by analogy with the fog of war. They say there's the fog of war, when everything is secret and unclear, but Trump has come up with a new definition, the fog of peace. Why? Trump's remarks on Iran talks are already driving everyone crazy. Trump said that he doesn't really want to continue the truce with Iran after the new deadline, which was supposed to expire tonight, but now expires tomorrow on the evening of April 22. Kyiv time, that will be 3 a.m., and then there's a quote from Trump, I don't want to do this. Not much time, because by the time both sides get to this point, as you know, they've already been given the green light to move forward. Although I already knew they would do that. I think they had no choice. They have to negotiate. That's quite a word salad. Trump also stated that the US will resume strikes on Iran if an agreement with Tehran is not reached soon. Quote, I expect that we will bomb, because I believe that's the best approach to take. We are ready to act. I mean, the military is already eager to fight. Both sides have used the ceasefire to replenish their supplies. Iran has a strong incentive to make a deal with the US. After all, the people of Iran are incredible, but their leadership is bloodthirsty. If Iran makes a deal, it can become a strong state again, a wonderful country once more. But the reality is that Trump has already extended his own ceasefire ultimatum, but he did it very cleverly. And first, on Sunday, Trump told all the journalists that a peace agreement with Iran should be reached by Monday. On Monday morning, he announced that US Vice President J.D. Vance was heading to Islamabad for talks on Tuesday. As a result, by 2 o'clock p.m. and even 3 o'clock p.m. Washington time on Tuesday, Vance still hadn't left the United States of America. Trump wants the war to end now and on his terms. But there were only a few hours left until the ceasefire expired. Iran still controls the Strait of Hormuz. And the parties have still not even managed to schedule a meeting, let alone agree on anything. That's why the war could be on the verge of a major escalation. And now the publication Axios quotes a White House spokesperson, quote, Donald Trump is tired of all this. He wants it to end. He doesn't like that Iran controls the Strait and has the Middle East in its grip. He doesn't like that they use this against us. He doesn't want to fight anymore, but he will fight if he feels it's necessary. And so, the cunning Donald Trump casually extended his own deadline. And the most interesting thing is that you and I and many others didn't even notice how Trump extended his own ceasefire, even though he said he didn't want to extend it. Let me remind you, an official 2-week ceasefire was established on April 7. According to the plans, the truce was supposed to end today, April 21, late in the evening. And although concluding a full-scale deal in such a short time would be difficult, Trump could also agree to simply extend the deadline if there were signs of progress. And the day before, Trump actually added another day to his own deadline. Although the 2 weeks agreed upon in the ceasefire agreement were set to expire on Tuesday, on Monday Trump came out and, as if nothing had happened, announced that the new deadline was now Wednesday evening. Although just yesterday he said he didn't want to extend the ceasefire, he ended up extending it after all. And here I want to remind you and even point out directly that, as of, for example, Friday, Trump's optimistic statement about peace coming soon, and at that time he said the deal would be reached in a day or two, seemed quite plausible. Why? Because at that moment, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi had just announced that the Hormuz Strait was completely open. World markets rejoiced, oil prices plummeted, but in just 24 hours the situation seemed to start getting out of control again and was on the brink of war. A few hours after Araghchi announced on Saturday that the strait was open, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps opened fire on tankers trying to cross it, citing Trump's unwillingness to lift the American blockade he himself imposed. American officials saw this as evidence of a split between the Speaker of Parliament, Mohammad Bakr Ghalibaf, and the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, General Ahmad Vahidi. It turned out that the U.S. delegation believed that Ghalibaf and Araghchi were actually making some decisions and that it was possible to negotiate with them. But in reality, it turned out that both Ghalibaf and Araghchi were just pawns, and all decisions were made by the leadership of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, who were actually against a peaceful deal with the U.S. and did not participate in the negotiations. American officials insist that there is currently a real split between these factions in Tehran, and it's completely unclear who will come out on top. Even in Tehran, no one knows who truly runs the country: the politicians, parliament members, diplomats, or still the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps militants. Another 24 hours pass, and on Sunday the US escalated the situation by firing on and seizing a cargo ship flying the Iranian flag outside the Strait of Oman. But in reality, Donald Trump's constant comments are what actually made the confusion worse as he swings between threats and optimism. And let's be honest, through dishonesty. While his negotiators were offering to unfreeze $20 billion of Iranian assets in exchange for Iran's uranium stockpiles and discussing a temporary moratorium on uranium enrichment, Trump falsely claimed in public that Iran had already agreed to give up its uranium stockpiles and enrichment. And supposedly, unfreezing the funds for this wasn't required at all. Just a reminder, that's what Trump claimed. When the negotiations reached a deadlock, Trump made a series of even more contradictory statements about who from his team would go to Pakistan for talks and when. At first, J.D. Vance wasn't going. Trump said that only Witkoff and Kushner would fly. Then J.D. Vance was already going to Pakistan. Then, according to Trump, J.D. Vance was already in the air and his plane was about to land in Pakistan. Then it turned out that J.D. Vance hadn't even boarded that plane. And as of now, no one has flown anywhere. Meanwhile, the Iranian side claimed that Trump was lying all the time. And just 2 days later, Trump, who already had a deal in his pocket on Friday, once again unleashed threats against Iran to destroy its bridges and power plants. And Tehran suspected that this was his true intention and that the diplomatic negotiations were just a cover for a sudden attack. The president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, made the following statement, quote, "There remains a deep historical distrust in Iran toward the actions of the U.S. government, and the destructive and contradictory signals from American officials carry a bitter message. They demand Iran's surrender, but Iranians do not submit to force." And the problem is that, despite Donald Trump's statement, the Iranians have never agreed to permanently give up enrichment and have never agreed to hand over this uranium to the US or any other country. But Trump has already announced that Iran has agreed to all of this. Now, representatives of the Trump administration say that he, meaning Trump, will most likely unfreeze Iranian assets if a favorable deal is reached. Trump, however, still insists he will not take that step. Meanwhile, Trump and his team are now discussing what the renewal will look like. The renewed military campaign, including whether they should try to capture the strategically important Kark Island. Trump stated that the bombing campaign, which began on February 28, would be completed within 6 weeks, and he made sure to meet that deadline. But according to officials from his administration, this might have been only the first stage of the war, and an even more active phase could be ahead. Because even the extended suspension of restrictions, which Trump implemented, does not seem likely to lead to a peace agreement by Wednesday evening. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, I would be grateful. You can do this with any donation or a paid membership using the links and details in the description of this video or by scanning the QR code on your screen. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.